Kalispera. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to this second to last Agora talk for this year's 64th Thessaloniki International Film Festival. We want to thank you, the Momus Thessaloniki Museum of Photography, for hosting us all these days. Please make sure to check out the wonderful exhibition. And we have a very important talk this afternoon. It's called Climate Storytelling, a conversation. It's going to be a conversation between three wonderful professionals. And it's important for us here in Thessaloniki International Film Festival because we are actively trying to make changes in sustainability. And we have started our researches, and we're taking steps towards green practices to become a more environmentally friendly cultural event. And we want to raise awareness regarding sustainability and green practices in film production, but also in general, and the way we are leading our lives and the way we are behaving to nature. But then it all starts also from the stories we tell. So we have here with us Emma Doxiadi, filmmaker and sustainability coordinator, Everybody's, and she will be leading the conversation. And we are very happy to have with us also Isabelle Fauvel, development advisor and CEO of Initiative Film, with a very long experience in script development. And of course, Bassam Alasad, producer, Creative Media Solutions, but also co-founder of Greener Screen from Jordan. Thank you, and let's move on.
Thank you for this introduction. Hi everyone, I'm Emma. We will be having this panel in the style of a conversation, so we'll try to keep it flowing between us, but it does have a structure. And then we will leave around 10 minutes in the end for questions and open it up to everyone to participate as well. So I will let you, Isabelle and Bassam, introduce yourselves.
Well, thank you. I'm going to start, even though I'm not a specialist. I'm, surrounded by two people who have a lot to say about this topic. When I guess I will be there mostly to explain what we are doing and how come we cross this climate storytelling issues. So my name is Isabelle Fauvel. I'm based in Paris. My company is called Initiative Film, and I'm happy to be here with my partner in the company, Hakim Mao. Let's say we are welcoming scriptwriters and producers and directors from all over the world when they are crossing this long period of time, which is called development. Could spend years developing a project, fortunately and unfortunately, depends. And we try to light their road to production, meaning that we are not doing only script consultancies, but in general development. Sometimes we find a co-writer for writer-producers or writer-directors. Sometimes we look for books to adapt. Sometimes we look for a co-producer at early stages of development, meaning that as advisors, we can advise people at any moment of development, and we know how long is this journey and how lonely directors, producers, and scriptwriters are. We are not specialized in any green issues, but of course we are crossing many questions, and sometimes we are surprised that we don't think about it that much. Of course, we cannot push people to think about it, but in fact, listening to my colleague, I guess we will find better ways to be also aware of what we can do and what we can't do.
Hello, my name is Bassam Alasad. I'm co-founder of Greener Screen, based between Jordan and Dubai. What we do in Greener Screen, we started back in 2017. So what we do is we work with filmmakers in two sides. First is in the production side. We help them to create their best practices plan, how to shoot environmentally friendly, and to adapt to what they have in that country that they are working in. So we work in a cross-like of most of the Arab-speaking countries, but sometime beyond. And the other side, which is what we're going to talk about, is the storytelling side. Because we discovered when we work with films in production side, we cannot involve in their creativity, and sometimes we draw the line, where can we do an environmental intervention, and then we say creative vision is above everything, because we're in a film industry. We're not environmentalists here. We're filmmakers that try to do an environmental friendly production. So we decided to go one step back and work on the development phase to help filmmakers see the value of integrating climate issues in their scripts, either in a direct way or a very subtle indirect way, by adding a character that has that trait, or a plot, or even a placement, a physical placement, like someone is recycling or an electric car. Or so this is in a nutshell what we do in Greener Screen. And the most important thing, we're working as a social enterprise, so we don't charge money from filmmakers. We try to fundraise our own money, because it's an extra burden for them they are trying to fundraise creating their films, and add on that being environmental friendly, especially in a very on the way, like developing industries in Jordan or in other countries around the region. So we try to do the fundraising and cover our own expenses, so they don't have any burden on their shoulders.
Okay, thank you. And I'm a filmmaker. I won't go into really digging in about myself, but I feel like what we do have in common, the three of us, and it became very apparent also. It was a very good, I think, pairing, but also in the conversation that we had leading up to this panel was conversation that we all care very much about finding ways to address important social issues that reflect the human experience and being part of this world and living with each other. And we talked a lot about the power that storytelling has to influence, provoke conversations, or put in the forefront topics that perhaps, I'm not sure what it is. Actually, I'm going to ask you what you think, but topics that perhaps we also don't know how to talk about and tackle. So I guess a good point to really kick this off, even though you did touch upon it, Bassam, is to I'm curious how you would interpret the term climate storytelling, knowing that there is no one absolute definition for it.
I love to call it cli-fi, to give it like something, branding it a little bit. Well, what I would identify something that has a climate issue is an integration or a placement of environmental topics in the film. It doesn't have to be all the film about it, even it's just one scene. Because in entertainment, people receive messages because they are letting their guards down. They are not expecting a preachy message. So when something coming to them subtly, and this is the kind of climate storytelling that I love. But at the same time, there are so many straightforward, direct to the point climate related films. So it is the placement of environmental topics inside a bigger cosmos of the film.
Well, on our side, I feel like it's not really a problem of storytelling. It's the fact that if it's not strictly written in a script, when suddenly we jump into production, and this crazy stuff that you write and rewrite for years, and suddenly everything goes so fast that you don't even have time enough to talk to the production manager or to people who will take over. And then if, for example, you show a couple doing shopping, and you don't explain that they shop in a very special shop and not in a big supermarket, immediately it will be translated as they are going to shop in a supermarket, or they are going to buy Coca-Cola, or I don't know what. Coca-Cola, it's placement product, so it's different. But so it's, for me, the missing link is between this long period of time of writing and rewriting and the moment where it is interpreted by people who are going to decide for how this couple, how those people, how those characters are going to act in the film.
It was a very interesting fact to see the Good Energy Playbook, which is an open digital source providing storytellers with resources on how to integrate facets of the climate crisis into their narratives, whether the stories themselves and the scripts, the films themselves are dealing directly with the climate issue or not. They conducted a study in 2020, if I'm correct, with the USC University's Impact Lab of the Annenberg Center. I'm checking. And they conducted a study that spanned from 2016 to 2020. I believe that they went through 37,452 films that were made within this time frame, and they found that only 2.8% of these films had any mention to the climate crisis, whether through wording, direct address, behavior, or themes. And in a world that, you know, we were talking with some friends about just remembering the last time that it was warm within a year, within the 4 seasons, that Greece, I feel, is quite used to be like a fully separate, like 4-season country. We're trying to determine whether this kind of summery feel of November is something that also did exist in the past, and in our own, you know, that kind of the fire season, the summer, is something that I personally always remember growing up would occur here and there. You would hear about a fire in the summer, but the frequency and the magnitude with which various environmental catastrophes are occurring across the world is becoming increasingly unquestionably eerily frequent. And thus, we do see also in the film industry, in all facets of it, an increased sort of demand for placing not only the stories, but the projects that we're making within the wider context of the situation that we find ourselves in, which is that there's always a climate crisis story that is affecting our own individual lives, and thus we talk also very much about the idea of green productions, which you touched upon, Isabel, and I think it's important. Maybe we can address it more later, but just also the idea of how significant it is to integrate that thinking ahead for production. But maybe you could tell us a little. I don't know how you're reacting to this idea of. I don't know if you had heard about this. Study that was made with all these films and the
No, of course you did.
You have.
Well, yeah, there is this one, and there is the other one that BAFTA did through the Albert, and they analyzed the subtitles.
Could we talk about what Albert is? Because I think
sure.
it's a great resource.
Albert is the official initiative in the UK that supports and certify productions to be sustainably friendly. They have the resources of how you can do it, and they have the resources to calculate the measurements of the impact through carbon footprint and the actual operations of the production. So they do beyond. They have something called planet placement workshops when they focus on editorial content through news, sports, and entertainment. So they analyzed subtitles, I think, on 2020 or 2021 on different channels in the UK to compare the mentioning of climate action or climate change or any related environmental issues in non-news content, mostly in entertainment. And they had like that comparisons, how many time cat got mentioned in comparison to climate change, or how many time cake was mentioned in comparison. And it's always the huge gap. But I think last year it got a little bit balanced, so people are started commissioning editors, starting focusing more on climate-related topics. So yeah, it's important to monitor and see the impact, because it is very impact. We have very impactful industry, and we saw how media changed a lot. Like back in the 50s or 60s, when psychologists got hired by agencies to try to sell cigarettes, and they used that, and they managed to use it, and we discussed that in the call, and at the same time, to make it a little bit purposeful in the 90s and early 2000s, when they started to use the word designated driver. So they reduced the car accidents and some related to that. So we have, yani, I think those reports can make commissioning editors, producers, focusing on, oh, we have a missing area that we can focus on. It's important. It's trendy now. So let's, for me as environmentalist or someone advocating for environment, I'm happy that it is trendy and people are using it until it's normalized and becomes the norm.
Just to say something regarding what we talked about before meeting you guys. For sure, after the Second World War, the US uses cinema, Hollywood especially, in order to deliver what is the American way of life and influence the world and colonize the world with product. You know, for example, who was having milk and cornflakes in the morning? You know, my grandmother had soup, you know, and me too, in fact, when I was a kid. But now we admit that it's the way that people eat and sometimes think, but let's not go so far. But the difference between them and us now is that they had decades in order to influence the world. We don't have decades anymore because there is an emergency. So how do we use film in order to influence the audience and us in general when we have such a little time in front of us without being scary? And then for sure, this is a question that I keep in mind if sometimes we open up this topic with scriptwriters, you know, especially because when you start working in a treatment, you don't know if the film will be made in 7 years by now. So could you imagine if the film is on screen in 10 years and you feel like you're going to influence the audience? That's really weird, you know, like that's extreme. So this is interesting conversation to understand how come we can, of course, I'm always optimistic, but there is a big difference between influencing the world after the Second World War and now.
I'm thinking of, so to break it into like some categories, as you mentioned, I believe you both touched upon this, but if we had to generalize it, it would be dealing with essentially what is placed in the story that highlights our relationship to the climate crisis, let's say roughly. But that can be, you did mention Bassam as well, that it can be very directly, specifically related to the theme or the core of the story, but it can also be something that is more peripheral and is kind of inserted or sprinkled in for the sake of activating an audience and raising awareness. And you mentioned that you also work yourself on these climate storytelling workshops. Could you give us a brief overview of what you do there?
Yeah, sure. I had notes so I don't forget anything. Well, it's a 4 sessions workshop lab. We work with early scripts or even treatments. And it's very interactive, and we don't do it one-on-one. We would love to have like 3 or 4 different projects, sometimes people with documentaries and fiction all together in one room to talk a little bit about their projects. So in a nutshell, we during the workshop, we do a few things just to open their eyes on how they can use climate action in their scripts. We focus on solution-driven climate storytelling because, like, in the end of the workshop, we show them examples from what kind of cli-fi is available there, and we prefer not to do it because it has sometimes a negative impact on the movement of climate storytellers. So there are few types of films that highlight climate action. The first one is We're So Dumb, such as Don't Look Up. That humans are dumb and we're doomed and that's it. And there is nothing to empower the viewer with any message. There is the post-climopolitic, such as Wall-E, or I can't remember anything else. There is the super fuel solution utopia, like Tomorrowland, George Clooney. There is the man-made monsters kind of films that, like Terminator, and it's coming to kill us. And there is the evil humans versus good nature, like Avatar. Also, like it's greedy humans, and then there is a superhero that will save the day. And then, oops, wrong solution, like Snowpiercer. And the last one is the Do Ex Machina, which is like the day the Earth stood still. So it's always like when you watch it, you know we're doomed, but you don't know what to do after that. So we're trying to focus on, okay, let's show actions, or let's raise the issues. Maybe we don't give solutions, but let's raise the issues. And we don't need to give contradicting messages. Like, I don't know, someone's doing recycling and driving a V8 car, or you know, we're trying to have a, we try to be a little bit invasive when we give them the ideas, so they can choose and pick what they want to do. We don't force anything on them. So we focus on like showing the actions, like eating well on screen, traveling better, shopping ethically, be resourceful, wasteless, love nature. Those like huge general topics that can really go deep and can fit in any kind of storytelling. And with the raising awareness, we go for campaigning, questioning, fight misinformation, using the climate psychology to like put that seed of ideas. So in general, this is what we work on. We keep like giving, sharing and feedbacking, and then by the end we have like a one-on-one on a feedback if they decided to change and how they will do it, and we keep connecting them if they need a research partner or an environmentalist on board, and we secure that for them.
On our side, it's very different because obviously, as we are not specialists, people come to us with any kind of project, and we can only start to talk when, first of all, the world of the story of the project fits this kind of conversation. And sometimes we are just surprised that people don't really think about, for example, what is the job of this protagonist? He's working in an office. Could be an office which is concerned by climate change and etc. But for sure, as advisor, or even when we are story editors, we can only open a conversation. We can't be intrusive. It's not our role, and we won't cross the line. Neither for that, neither for another cause. What is interesting is that if we work as observers, now we see a little number of films which are projects, or not yet films, which really are completely dedicated to climate change and everything, which kind of militant, way of delivery, or nothing is changing. In fact, we feel like we are reading people relationship or people habits exactly the same way as we wrote it 20 years ago. And that's surprising. That's also why I was interested by participating in your panel, because I'm sure we will learn a lot. And I didn't know about your workshop, which definitely is different. But us, we just receive and we open up conversation.
I feel like it's interesting that you also mentioned the how tricky it can be to this sense of powerlessness, I guess, that a lot of people feel when talking about this issue. I have seen it from the kind of hands-on, like practical experience of working on projects that focus on minimizing waste and consumption during, let's say, an event, a festival, or a film production. But the consensus that I see, not consensus, but like a recurring question is one where an individual or a group will say, but in the grand scheme of things, you know, what difference does this make? And I think with storytelling, we do have a very unique power to really kind of problem solve this on paper and find a way that this this narrative does, we can control the way in which it affects us, I think, when it comes to whether like raising a question or really shifting the narrative away from, as you were saying, like focusing on the negative kind of, there is nothing to be done, because there's just a lot of different things that can be done.
According to me, this power is more in the hand of people who are writing TV series right now, for many reasons. First of all, because TV series come inside your house and for a longer time, and of course reach a bigger number of people, fortunately for features. And I'm not so sure everything is interesting and it's a contribution, but I really feel like this kind of talk should be really addressed to people who are writing TV series right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. Especially you don't know who's watching, if it's a decision maker or a future decision maker, and if you planted that seed, it will help.
Yeah. And it goes faster, by the way, in terms of jumping into production than a feature film, especially independent, hardcore feature film.
Yeah. Costs more, but goes faster too, perhaps. And I was wondering on that front, talking about more specific storytelling tools. I was thinking about character arcs, as you were talking about TV, for instance, and I wonder what the extent to which a character changes across a film or a TV series. I wonder what you think about the effectiveness that can have, or if there's like specific, I guess, character types when we observe like an arc of a character, if there is a type that can allow for the effectiveness of like the climate crisis message to be conveyed, or if there's, let's focus, for instance, on character, but also are there any other narrative devices? Maybe this is a very open question, but some specific, let's say, storytelling tools that you would suggest one considers.
Well, a good developed film will help. Then the environmental placement would be easy to put it with a really developed character that people will relate with, that has a constant actions and it's part of their life. So it's really important to develop it as similar. It's not separate from the regular development of your film, of making a really good film. So the tools, it's the same tools of development, but with having the environment in your back of your head.
My concern is, and it goes further than what we are talking about. Right now, writers, directors, they have to obey to so many rules, and you know, they're under pressure. They are not free anymore to write the way they want. And even though I'm totally concerned about what we are talking about, I wouldn't picture myself adding this idea of being obliged to incorporate things that I do believe in personally, but it's not my film anyway. So I'm a little bit afraid in general of the way that we want to control storytelling, you know, and especially my main concern is about how when you try to finance your movie, if you tackle climate change, you can have one click. If you tackle a social issue, one click. If you tackle diversity, one click. And in the end, you know, where is the freedom of the directors or producers, of course, because without producers anyway, no film. And it's, I feel like, of course, we can have goodwill and we believe in that, and thanks God some people want to change things through storytelling, and I will never stop that. But I'm really afraid of the side effect of that kind of you should respect this and that, because there are so many already problems regarding how to be able to read a script, you know. many people, they don't know how to read a script anymore. Yeah. So they just rely on, does the script respect the rule of dramaturgy that they learn, I don't know where, and I don't know how? Yes, good. Do they respect climate change? Yes, good. Is there black people in the script? Yes, good. And I'm really sick of it. And I don't want to play that, personally. You know, even though, again, you know, we try our best to, I don't know, to open a discussion, to make it happen, but to a certain limit.
Yeah, I agree with you. We received many films that there is nothing in the plot or the characters can fit any climate storytelling. And we would say, like, if you want to do it, okay, then we will think with you on placements, with the art department. Okay, does the car brand would affect your story? No, okay, let them drive an electric car. Does a conversation in your...
them walk.
Yeah, or walk, yeah, of course. Does in the conversation or the settings of whatever any thing that have recycling or the way they dress or eat, even you don't have to show a fresh food like a leftovers, and it's rarely shown in Arab films, for example, to see like a leftovers, people eating and eating leftovers, or a vegan meal, and it's like 70% of the daily food in the culture is vegan, by without thinking about it. So it is just don't force it. Just if you find something, have it. If not, do your production green and do that part. It doesn't have to be on screen, but we always hope like to find a way to integrate that.
Yeah, I suppose the challenge also is often this didactic element that can also come across, aside from a checklist, as you put it, and kind of working with a more sterile approach of this story should tick these boxes of like trending topics, let's say, or approaches to telling a story or making a film. Something that I encounter very often myself and with other filmmakers that I discuss, integrating or basically making the story react to the wider context of the universe in which it is occurring or unfolding, is really how not to be didactic about these placements, let's say. And it's interesting. I was watching a TV series that is a comedy that is set in New York. I guess it's a drama, but a comedy as well. And there was mentions of pertaining to the rise in temperature and things related to the climate crisis in what was basically a divorce drama. But they managed to find a way to infuse, there were like 6 lines of dialogue in every episode that just addressed it. And they created basically the internal kind of limbo of the protagonist became a parallel with the rise in temperature, which I thought was very effective, and it had absolutely nothing to do with what the story was about. But I didn't mind it, and it kind of, I thought, you know, this is like a little wink basically to the audience, and whoever gets it, and whoever doesn't, there is such a thing to be said about a subliminal influence. And we had, I remember in our conversation or in our call, we discussed just the methods that film as a medium has adopted across decades to, for bad ends and for good, to really create impact and affect the perception of someone viewing it, essentially. Which I think is something that, if we see it from that perspective, that's kind of how I always see like planet placement, or focusing on actions and behaviors that are seemingly ordinary, but they are the behaviors of an environmentally conscious person, let's say, perhaps, or talking about sustainability, like the social aspect of it as well, which deals with inclusivity, which is something that we see again in the way that stories are being told. I just thought it's interesting to think of the idea that you can have a script, I can have a very specific story and keep it exactly the same, but just like find little tiny tweaks to make that are like seeds for whoever is there to see them and be affected by them.
What I do feel, even though we are not developing indoors, we just help people to develop their own project, that what could be very interesting even for us in order for food for thought would be to imagine, because we receive a lot of dystopia, for sure. You know, every time we tackle those topics, it's a dystopia. And of course, it's complicated right now to think of any utopia because we are all afraid, I guess. But I really feel like if we don't give a space to think to all of us, and us, we are audience as well, that something could be good ahead, it's very complicated to decide to do some progress right now. You know, if we feel like anyway, it's useless. You can talk with scriptwriters, with producers, with directors, with the audience. It doesn't really matter. So I would be happy to join at one point your lab in order to try to not to be naive and stupid, but just to try to give to people the possibility of something after the catastrophe, who could maybe build a better world. Because if we cannot provide that to the audience, that's complicated for anyone to decide to do better, to be better regarding to what we are facing.
Have you found there to be any genres specifically that, this is a very subjective question, that have an ability to tackle certain urgent issues in more pronounced way than others?
For me, comedies, because it's easier to hit people with the message. They are not expecting it, and at the same time, they will take it, they will laugh about it, and then they will think about it. So I think,
with no guilt.
Yeah. So yani, most of the examples that we have on the lab, like we show some clips, it's mostly comedies, Netflix things. There is a series called Politician. I think the second season all built around climate catastrophe and climate change. There is a film, I forgot what, Lovebirds. It has a lot of climate messages. Also, sometimes dramas, of course, would help, but it's always like in the form of like a comic relief, even if it's high tension.
If we talk about, let's say, before storytelling, what is also complicated is the fact that in the past, development was really green, because we're all alone at home, sometimes with a pen, even before the computer, writing, thinking, sometimes having lunch or dinner with producers, directors, or advisors when they were already around. But now, I've been part of it, so I cannot deny we are joining labs. So we are taking plane, so suddenly it's not the same. And there is a big dilemma, you know, like it's much more efficient to be face-to-face with a writer, director, producer when we work the way we work. So, of course, we love traveling, like in here, for example, you know. We love being part of the lab. I've been part of many labs, especially TFL, Torino Film Lab. But I'm reaching a moment of my life where I feel like, should I do that still? For sure, online doesn't work the same, and online is also polluted. There's pollution as well. So this is always the limit, and this limitation is reflected later on in the storytelling and the way we approach the writing. But and that's also, sometimes it's very hypocritical, you know. The big institution, like Creative Europe, they give money to make a festival greener, and suddenly you discover that the sponsor of the festival is Nespresso. Okay, you know, Nestlé is one of the biggest problem of the planet, you know. So, of course, people are confused. Of course, it's complicated to open up a conversation with somebody who's trying just to tell a simple story because they feel like it's useless. So we, first of all, make people feel that nothing is useless. I couldn't say it's very useful, but it's not useless.
And I think that making space for this deliberation is also something that we discussed that would be the aim of this panel, because it's such a vast topic, and just to make room for it to explore this idea of what does it mean to be integrating the climate crisis in any story essentially is an important starting point. And I think it's also worth making a connection here with the industry at large, and the idea of facing it, perhaps the idea of climate storytelling being an aspect of a responsibility that the industry, the audiovisual industry is facing, as well as with other steps that they have taken to be a more equitable industry. And then, of course, a script is, maybe you'll argue against that, but it is but a blueprint to a film. And thus, it is a first stage to telling a story. And we talked a lot about another aspect of the film industry and the audiovisual industry in terms of becoming more sustainable, which deals with not just talking the talk, but walking the walk, finding ways to integrate solutions to lower their environmental footprint and to become more equitable. And so I think it's also interesting just to point out, you did touch upon it briefly, but the idea of also looking at combing through a script, let's say, to find solutions that pertain and prevent being a part of the problem when it comes to the climate crisis in terms of how the film itself is made. And maybe you could give some examples of that.
We worked with several films on doing their production sustainably. One of the favorite and biggest benchmark is Costa Brava, Lebanon, a Lebanese film that is on Netflix. I think in Europe it's available. It tackles the climate issue as a film. So the producer, Miriam Sassine, and the director, Munia Aqil, they decided to do it green. And there was an initiative by a Lebanese very active initiative or organization called Beirut DC, now Aflamuna. They wanted to do a guideline of green production. And we never talked to each other. We didn't know each other personally. And a friend of ours connected us as Greener Screen and Beirut DC. And they said, okay, we have an idea to create a guidelines and to publish it for people to follow it like step by step. And we said, we have it. So we did some localization and development, and we made a guidebook that is available online to filmmakers to walk it like it is easy to follow. So they had Costa Brava as part of their Good Pitch in Arabic, the Doc Society initiative. And they said, we want to produce it as green as possible. So we worked with them. They have an impact producer and an eco manager. We did a workshop with them online. We didn't travel there. It was fully virtual. So we give them the tips and tricks. We created all the material that they need to have everywhere so people understand why they are doing that green. So we focused on different departments. First, it's hard to have any other solutions than diesel generators in Lebanon because there is no grid. So their grid is based on diesel generators. So they had a lot of outdoors and like daylight shootings. They optimized the daylight. Then we focused on the props and materials. So they filmed in a very eco-friendly farm that it is built like that. They brought a local caterer who can understand how to dispose the food properly, to do a compost and give it to local chicken farms around them. Then the outfits and the wardrobe, they bought from thrift shops, because the eco manager and the impact producer is one of the props team. So they did really well. There is a whole case study about what they did in BAFTA website in Albert. If you just write trash comedy, it will pop up somewhere. So they did really well, and it was really amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that film. It's so great, and really doing both. And we were just talking before we walked in here about COP28 and how there is an actual pavilion that is focusing on creatives who focus on integrating their work, the climate crisis in their work. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. Thankfully, we are not yet a competitive side of the industry. We are collaborative, still collaborative. So 2 years ago, most of the sustainable practitioners in in North America and in Europe, in Southeast Asia and Middle East, we few people got an idea to create some sort of an alliance to work together to have like a pledge that we try to force big studios to sign and to have a roadmap of a net zero industry. So to become carbon neutral, to reduce as much as we can and to offset the rest of it, but first reducing. So for the past 2 years, it was building up. Last year, we had a small launch in COP27 in Egypt. COP is if anyone doesn't know what is COP, it's the climate conference that happened where countries come negotiating how they will delay the solution for climate change. But we are trying to use our platforms to advocate for at least speeding up things. So this year, there is something called Entertainment and Culture Pavilion in the Blue Zone, where are the UN, all countries, all delegations are. It will be there for the whole period for 12 days, full of programming, talking about climate justice, climate change, climate storytelling, integrating stories of indigenous people from all around the world, showing films, showing case studies, talking about how people succeeded around the world by themselves and how we can duplicate this success everywhere else, to share knowledge, to share experiences. So it will be in end of November till like 12th of December. And we're doing other activities around COP, inside COP, and beyond, because there are few initiatives, like there is GCSN Global Climate Storytellers Network. It's available if you want. I can share with you the links how to join this virtual community. We have like a monthly discussions. We have like a pitch. We support each other by giving ideas. There is the ECA that does the climate, the pavilion, entertainment, culture. It was easier. It was ENZA, Entertainment Net Zero Accord, but now it's ECA. It's something climate and culture and accord together. So yeah, there are a few activities around COP. If you're in Dubai in that time, please just let me know.
I want to, I'm mindful of the time, just open it up to the audience if anyone has any questions or thoughts or remarks perhaps to make.
Hi, I'm a filmmaker myself, and being that, I tend to be a little more on Isabel's side in terms of being reluctant to accept, you know, the quote-unquote invasive or preachy approach, or even the latest tendency of not offending anyone in the art and just not breaking any eggs. Having said that, because the topic is so profound, I wonder, because I don't know if there's any thoughts or movements around how fundings are given and whether climate is considered an additional bonus in the same way that, you know, including minorities, more minorities, or increasing awareness on that department brings more visibility and makes projects more attractive, and whether that could be an added incentive to incorporate the topic.
There are dedicated funds for climate storytelling, like Climate Story Fund by Doc Society. They give both fiction and documentaries. They have a fund for impact and production. It is between $40,000 up to $100,000. I know of some funds that ask if you are producing your film green, but not if it's in the storytelling, it gives you some points. And others, like they would say, we prioritize films about climate change, human rights, and like there are few, but there are no any exclusivity or focus that I know of.
Do you think they should be more like in the state and funding bodies?
And sorry, I would like to add, in many labs now, or workshops, or co-production market, there are also some very small award, but which also give kind of awareness, and your product suddenly is on the spot. It's symbolic right now. Like there is one award in TFL called White Mirror Award, and even in here. So it's going to be everywhere, I guess, after a while.
It's interesting to see, discuss basically, it's interesting to discuss the incentives that people need to create more work that follows a certain thematic trajectory. But I think having an approach where, you know, this presence is rewarded is very good. Definitely, I think to have, I wish there was more emphasis on the storytelling, enhancing the storytelling aspect rather than only the production. It's not like green productions receive like significant funding anywhere, but also to focus on that more creative facet of it would be great.
Well, we have like a small division in Greener Screen that we were trying to push policies, and we're testing now in Jordan. So we're working with the Film Commission on how we can integrate green production in the incentive scheme that Jordan has, and we're trying to convince the Film Fund to have some sort of, if they can consider environmental storytellings. But it's something that we need to keep nudging until it is available, and then we can duplicate it around the region.
But again, for me, there is a side effect that when you receive that kind of award, is it because of the film you are doing as filmmakers, or is it because you are tackling a topic which right now fits the needs? Of course, when it's both, everybody's happy, you know. I remember last year at TFL, the guy who won this award is a fucking genius, you know, and his film is brilliant, his product is brilliant. So nobody complained. But, in fact, I did. But because he received that award, he didn't receive a bigger award who was given to somebody else. So, you know, there is always something which is bizarre because nobody talk about it, you know. We should sit down with commissioners, with juries, tell them, first of all, we are not NGO. First of all, we are not... no, but really, because otherwise people now, they are afraid that they should, you know, not give award to somebody who is tackling something which sounds more interesting or more important. But we talk about filmmakers, you know? And I'm not talking about TV series because I know nothing about TV series. But when somebody is really gifted, even if he talks about those two glasses, one full, one empty, and if he's really gifted and if really can do a film about it, which is water, by the way, it could be sustainable, but let's imagine, I don't know, beer. I don't care, because my job as an advisor, my job as what I am, is to help those people to make it happen. So that's complicated. That's always, you know, a limit of what we would like to do, what we can do, what we can't do, how far we go, and when we stop. You know.
Are there any? Oh, we have another question, and I think this has to be
have
our
a
last.
more of a comment or a bragging than a question. But let's say that for a decade now, I'm developing a film with a female director about motherhood in this context of changing world, where the climate crisis is something that our generation needs to consider when deciding whether we will become parents or not. We started to work on this story in a subtle way, more around the character, but from the beginning we had this atmosphere of the Mediterranean island where we have wildfires and deers dying out of thirst because of the drought. More and more, like since the situation got worse and worse, it became a really more significant element of the film that when we started, which was really good for her as a director and me as a producer, because we noticed that it is something that we really want to talk about, since we both became mothers during this development hell. But I have to share with you that it's really hard for us to finance that film, that it was really hard to finance it in our country, Croatia, that is a Mediterranean country that is going to be severely affected by the climate change. Also, we didn't find money in media, for example. So we checked the boxes, like we have the female director that worked with Pavel Pavlikovsky on the script, and Razvan Radulescu. So it's a very good project, I would say. But at the same time, it is very hard for us to find the financing for the film. So it's not that easy, even though we are very, very the topic is very hot, and we are like females doing it. It's not that people are just coming to us and saying, here's the money and do it.
No, of course, not all the money goes to that kind of project, even if they deserve it, by the way. You know, everything is unfair in terms of financing anyway.
I think we have to wrap it up, but I just wanted to ask you if there's any final remarks. Anybody wants to add something, including you? Maybe it's something to take away if we had to wrap it up.
Oh, I guess I wrapped up already when I was telling that my concern is just to open up a conversation, a real discussion with professionals for what we are doing, why are we doing it. Otherwise, even if you didn't receive the money they were asking for needed, it will blur what is supposed to be our job. You know, so it's crucial to me not to cross the red line as an advisor. Our position, you know.
As Kermit the Frog would say, it's hard to be green, but we need to keep like knocking doors and knocking walls and try to change.
And for me, I would say that it's about kind of becoming aware of the complexity of the subject matter and tackling anything that is how different topics are interconnect when it comes to the relationships of humans and the environment, and the way that we choose to tell them and make the films. It's just good to make a space to have that conversation and to deliberate with each other.
And I would say, let's be radical.
Yeah, that's a good one. Good end note. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you.